How destructive are they?
They're very destructive. If I looked at it on average, I could lose up to 10% of my grain crops in a growing season.
Local Texas farmers woke up one morning and guess what they saw? Their fields were utterly destroyed overnight by wild boars. Irrigation lines were bent like toys, and everything they had built was destroyed. How do you stop an attack of this sort once and for all? That's the real question. What these Texas farmers did was so smart that it turned the whole rampage around, and it's hard to believe. Stick with us. You'll want to see this. The ancient enemy returns. The story of the wild boar disaster in the United States doesn't start with a monster or a riddle. It all starts with a small error. Along with a group of farm pigs, the Spanish explorer Hernando de Soto arrived on the coast of Florida in 1539. They were meant to be an easy way for him to carry food on his trip. No one thought about what would happen after a few people got away into the woods. Those cute pigs in the barn weren't so cute after they got out. They quickly learned to adapt, lived through storms, found food easily, and had many babies in the wild. That escape led to the first groups of wild pigs in North America. The land then had a problem that got worse quickly than anyone had expected. These first wild pigs stayed together in small groups for a long time. They lived near wetlands and wooded areas. Sometimes they would break into fields, but most of the time no one would notice. America wouldn't be fighting the invasion it is now if the story stopped there. But things changed when rich landowners and hunting clubs brought in huge Eurasian wild boars from Asia and Europe in the early 90s. These farm animals were not nice. They were huge, tough, quick, mean, and built just right for life. They could plow through thorny brush, run through mud, and chew through roots like a shovel. They were everything hunters wanted and everything farmers feared. When these European wild boars got loose or were set free on purpose for hunting, they mixed with the wild pigs that were already there. That mix made a new animal that was much stronger than either parent. It was a super species that was very smart, very strong, and could live in almost any setting. This mixed species animal could swim in rivers, climb high hills, hide in thick brush, and eat just about anything. It wasn't just getting by, it was flourishing. It was too late for the states to figure out what had happened. There were a lot more people. In 1982, there were about 2.4 million wild boars in 18 states in the United States. Even though it was a big problem, the country tried to ignore it. Everyone was sorry they made that choice. The number of hogs had almost tripled by 2016, when there were 7 million of them living in 35 states. The speed at which these animals were spreading shocked scientists. They weren't moving slowly. This growth wasn't normal. This was an attack. Texas became a great place for wild boars to live. There were already all the things the animals needed. East Texas had thick pine woods and soft soil that was great for roots. They could hide in the rolling hills and thick brush of Central Texas. They were safe from people and animals in South Texas because it had thick, thorny brush. They could raid fields on the open plains of the Panhandle at night. The land gave them a place to live, food and water, no matter where they went. Texas was kind of like a fancy hotel for wild pigs in a weird way. These days, farming and ranching have made things even easier for the animals. Ranchers built water tanks for their cattle that pigs used all year long. Corn, wheat, peanuts, and soybeans were grown by farmers. Wild pigs loved these things. Wildlife managers made water lines better for deer, but hogs also took those over. The people of Texas didn't mean to make the right place for wild boars to live, but everything worked out for them. In Texas, there were also no native predators that were strong enough or numerous enough to keep the hog population in check. Piglets were eaten by coyotes, but they were afraid to attack adults. Cats like bobcats had no chance. Too few black bears were seen. Mountain lions didn't go near them unless they had to. Even animals that were meant to eat them didn't want to touch these hogs because they were so tough. The boars did whatever they wanted since they didn't have any enemies. Then came their most dangerous advantage. They could reproduce so quickly, it only takes 6 months for a female hog to reach full size. They only have babies for about 4 months. When there is plenty of food, they can have 2 litters a year, with 10 to 12 babies in each. Even worse, those pigs grow quickly and can have babies in 6 to 12 months. This is not a normal way to reproduce. This machine is made of living things. It makes an exponential path that looks like it can't be stopped. If a farmer took away 100 boars from a land, the adults that were still there could replace them all in 18 months. This is why a few here and there doesn't work. This animal changes into a new one faster than most hunters can catch it, and faster than most farmers can respond. In the end, Texas had the worst problem with wild boars in all of America. A simple mistake made hundreds of years ago, along with people's natural curiosity, hunting practices, and the perfect weather, made a nightmare that no one could escape. It began with a few pigs but has grown into a statewide invasion that costs millions, destroys farms, pollutes water, and puts animals in danger. The number keeps going up every year. New sounders move into new counties every season. There is more damage to farms every night. The attack is still going strong. It speeds up. And when you see what these farmers came up with to stop thousands of wild boars at once, everything that happened will make perfect sense. That's because the next part shows how Texas turned chaos into order. The billion-dollar war. If the rise of wild boars is what started the problem, then the damage they cause is what makes Texas see them as a real enemy. It's not a small amount of damage that farms can simply overlook or ignore. There is a billion-dollar war going on every day in farms, pastures, rivers, and forests. And those numbers are crazy. Wild boars cause about 118.8 million in damage every year in Texas alone. And that number keeps going up as the population grows. That threat is not coming back. The event is happening now. It's shocking how quickly one animal can destroy land. There is a wild pig that can damage something worth $1,000 in just one night. That's how much it costs to fix fences, replace irrigation lines, fix dirt that has been rooted, and plant crops again. That's just one hog. The sounders, not the one hog, are the real threat. There may be 20 or more animals in these family groups running around together like a wrecking crew. A single pig can destroy 6.5 square feet of land every minute. If a whole sounder gets together, they can level acres of land before dawn. These animals are so strong that they tear through fields like bulldozers on legs. People usually think of wild animals eating crops to them. But this invasion works in a different way. 95% of the damage is caused by something much worse. Walking on, tearing, and pulling everything apart without touching the plants at all. There is no way for a group of wild hogs to slowly move through a farm. It looks like a tornado went through the field because they break stalks, snap irrigation pipes, rip out dirt, and smash fences as they go through it. It's not just crops that farmers lose. They lose whole seasons of work in one night. Hay fields and cornfields are especially at risk. When the hogs push through, the tall plants get flattened right away. Thousands-dollar irrigation systems get messed up so badly that they can't be fixed. The soil that was built up over many years gets loose and breaks up. It's also impossible to fix harm that has already been done. Soil structure isn't fixed by replanting. Changing the lines doesn't stop the erosion. Farmers stand in these damaged fields and know that they lost money, time, and security because of an attack that they could not have seen coming or stopped on their own. But farms aren't the only things that have been damaged. Wild boars change whole environments, which is something that not many invasive species can do. They dig deep into the ground to find roots, bugs, and anything else they can eat when they root. However, digging doesn't just make holes. Different layers of dirt that aren't supposed to mix are mixed together. This native plants that need certain soil conditions to grow and lets exotic plants take over. In just one season, places that have been steady for hundreds of years can change. Another quiet threat is erosion. The ground starts to break apart when hogs tear through soft ground or plow through creek banks. When it rains, the loose dirt is washed away. This makes deeper channels and takes nutrients away from the land. The shape of the land changes. Hills lose their dirt. Valleys get full of sand. And woods that used to have strong roots start to get weaker. This damage doesn't just hurt the land right now. It hurts it for people who will come after. Some of the worst damage is done to water lines. There is mud, good stuff for plants, and bad bacteria that gets stirred up when wild boars root in marshy areas or wallow in shallow water. The water quality quickly gets worse, streams get cloudy, and fish lose air. When animals drink water that is contaminated, they get sick. Aquatic species are going extinct. If trash and other things get into the water, it changes even the way it smells. The water that used to be clear and moving is now cloudy and dirty. Not only trees and water are being hurt. When they want to be, wild boars are very dangerous hunters. They break into the nests of birds that lay their eggs on the ground like doves, prairie chickens, and wild turkeys. Loss of territory is already making it hard for these birds to stay alive. And the hogs make it even more likely that they will go extinct. They are easy for hogs to find in the spring when deer fawns hide in tall grass. On top of that, they eat eggs from threatened species and reptiles and frogs. It's not just hunting. It's a chain reaction that breaks down whole food webs. That's what most people don't get. Wild boars do more than just damage land. Everywhere they go, they change the rules of nature. In order to live, they change the water, the ground, and other species' homes. That's a lot of power for an invading animal. They act like they own the land, not like they are guests. Even in places that don't seem to have been touched, they have left their mark. Birds have broken into nests in hollow trees. It looks like the fields are fine until someone steps into a secret-rooted patch. Heavy bodies moving through the brush have left marks on the forest floors. Because the ground is so wet, rivers get cloudy after every storm. These animals have left marks everywhere you look. They call it a war because of this. This isn't just to make the story sound exciting. They're facing an enemy that destroys land on every level, economically, environmentally, and ecologically. It costs money and time to fix every acre of damage done by hogs, and some harm can never be fixed. That's why farmers in Texas started looking for a way to stop the damage before it happened, not just slow it down. Why did all the old methods fail so badly? The next part of this journey will show you the shocking facts behind the mistakes that made the invasion even worse. Why traditional methods failed. By the time Texas understood how bad wild boars really were, it was clear that a lot of hunting would get rid of them.
200 feet in the air, maneuvering skillfully between phone lines and farmland. This is a helicopter hog hunt. And the goal today? Kill as many pigs.
It stands to reason that the animals' numbers would go down if the state let people hunt them all the time. However, what came next shocked everyone. The number of wild boars didn't go down. Instead, it grew even faster. Texas didn't fail, they just didn't try. It was because everything Texas let happen helped the hogs more than it hurt them. Texas didn't have many rules. There was no hunting season that was stopped. There was no set time of the year when no one could hunt wild hogs. Hunters didn't even need a license on private land. Rifles, shotguns, bows, crossbows, pistols, and even swords were all okay for them to use. There were hunters with dogs, from blinds, from feeders, and even from low-flying airplanes over the fields during the day and at night. The shooting areas were some of the most open in the whole country. Most people thought that the number of hogs would drop because they had so many freedoms. It didn't, though. Instead, the numbers went through the roof. A lot of hunters were confused, and landlords who didn't see any progress were angry. It didn't fail because of luck or fate, though. It was a direct result of what people did. The first big mistake was easy to make, but very bad. Shooters went after the wrong animals. Most people were looking for huge males with long tusks that were tough and big. These were the prizes. This is what hunters talked about when they were proud. The population growth wasn't caused by big men, though. The girls and little pigs were, twice a year, the females have big litters. Piglets grow quickly and start having babies early. But hunters didn't bother with them very often because they weren't very exciting to shoot. Getting rid of a big guy doesn't have much of an effect on population growth because he can breed with many females. At the same time, leaving the females living let reproduction go at full speed. In the end, hunting didn't really slow down the blast. It only got rid of animals that weren't necessary for the species to stay alive. To put it another way, the hunters were going after the wrong animal from the start. Tennessee began letting people hunt wild hogs on a large scale in 1999. There were only 6 counties with hogs at that time. But instead of keeping the people in line, something strange happened. In 2011, only 12 years after they were first seen, wild boars had spread to 70 counties. That wasn't a normal growth. It was charged up. California had the same thing happen. In 1956, wild pigs only lived in a few towns along the coast, but by 1999, they had spread to 56 of the 58 counties in the state. These blasts weren't caused by animals moving around naturally. They were made by people, mostly hunters and landowners who wanted to make more shooting areas. People illegally caught, moved, and released wild boars in new areas so they could hunt them closer to home or run commercial shooting operations. Every illegal release made a whole new community of animals that could breed. And each new group of people grew quickly. This changed hunting from a way to get animals to move across the map into a powerful engine that did just that. The third mistake was caused by systems that give rewards. Some places paid money for each wild hog that was killed, thinking that the money would encourage more of them to be taken care of. Instead, it caused chaos that no one saw coming. A few people began raising wild boars so that they could get more prize money in the future. Others brought in pigs that had been killed outside the zone to cheat and get awards. Even worse, extra food was given to hogs to attract more of them, which led to more babies and an even bigger population. Instead of stopping the invasion, rewards made it worse. Last but not least, small box traps were the mistake. 1 or 2 hogs could only be caught at a time in these traps. Farmers thought that taking out a few here and there would help the problem get better over time. However, wild pigs are very smart. The other hogs learned how to avoid the trap after a couple of them were caught in it. They taught their young what they knew. It only took a few seasons for whole sounders to become afraid of traps. They recognized the smell of people, metal structures, and strange shapes in their surroundings. They didn't become weaker because of the traps. Instead, they became smarter. These were no longer just hogs. These people knew how to run. All of these mistakes fit together like gears in a machine. People went after the wrong hogs. The right pigs kept having babies. People moved to new areas through illegal transportation. Bounty schemes encouraged people to lie and feed animals. Hogs learned how to deal with anything people put at them by using small traps. These old ways didn't make the invasion weaker. Instead, they made the wild boar population bigger, faster, and harder to stop. The Genius Revolution. Farmers in Texas finally got something that no one wanted to accept. When they were at their wits' end, hunters weren't wild boars to make them lose. They were winning because they knew what they were doing. These animals weren't stupid or slow. They were smart enough to see trends, stay out of harm's way, and teach their young everything they knew. To stay living, they used their smarts, which were more like those of a dog than a farm animal. One thing that meant was that the weapons weren't enough. They had to get smarter to beat a smart enemy. The big step forward came when farmers stopped thinking about hunting and started thinking about plans. The wild boars didn't worry about bullets, but they did notice trends. In places where they felt danger, they stayed away. They finally asked a simple but powerful question. What if we stopped trying to fight harder and start fighting smarter? Rather than trying to beat them, that change in how people thought led to the first big invention: big cage traps. The cages that held 1 or 2 pigs were not these. These were huge cages that could hold whole sounders, the family groups that did most of the damage. There was a big change. 4 times as many hogs were caught in corral traps as in box traps. It cost between $14 and $121 to get rid of 1 hog, but it was much cheaper to get rid of a bunch at once. The most important thing about these traps is that they killed whole family groups at once, so no one got used to them. Farmers weren't just catching hogs this time. They were also making it hard for the animals to learn and adapt.
We use them when we're locating pigs. We'll stick a bait source out. We'll use these cameras to identify the sounder if one comes in, or to identify that the pigs are not staying on the property.
But the real change started when farmers put these traps together with cell phone trail cams. When these cameras saw movement, they could send photos and videos to a farmer's phone right away. It changed the situation in an instant. Farmers could be miles away and still keep an eye on how hogs behave. They could tell what size each sounder was, see when the hogs ate, find out where they went, and tell which ones had learned how to avoid traps. Farmers weren't just responding without thinking for the first time. That's how wildlife scientists and military teams gather information about where the enemy is going. That led to the third big idea that changed everything: gate triggers that can be controlled from a distance. A hog would only be caught once or twice because old traps would snap shut as soon as one walked inside. This would also scare off the other hogs. The people who made it out ran away, remembered how dangerous it was, and for years dodged traps. However, remote systems turned the odds in their favor. Farmers could now use their phones to keep an eye on their traps. Once all the pigs in the sounder were inside, they could press a single button to open the gate. Not a squeak. Silence. Don't worry, no way out. This stopped trap-shy behavior overnight and stopped partial catches. It wasn't luck, it was skill. Even though nets worked in a lot of places, there were still places where hogs were too comfortable to be caught. That's when heat and night vision came in handy. Because hogs were most busy at night, farmers and trained teams could use thermal imaging to see whole sounders glowing in the dark. Suppressed made less noise, which kept groups together. If there was new damage to fields or farmland, this method would hogs as they were doing their harm. Because of the open land, something faster was needed, which led to aerial gunning teams in helicopters flew over ranch lands and hundreds of hogs all at once, mostly in wide, open places where the hogs couldn't hide. It worked better than any other way on very large areas. Another problem was dense areas like thick brush, swamps, or broken ground that made trap less useful. That's when dog teams with a lot of training became very important. These dogs were not just regular hunting dogs. They were trained, skilled, and knew how to find survivors that no one else could. They caught the hogs that were getting through all the rest. But it wasn't a single tool that was the smartest part. It was the choice to combine all of these approaches into a single military-style plan. Farmers in Texas came up with a method with multiple steps that dealt with the issue from all sides. Gathering information was the first step, which took 1 to 2 weeks. Farmers put cams all over their land and watched what animals did, made maps of damage areas, followed sounders, found out when animals ate, and found hogs that were afraid of being caught in traps. They didn't do anything until they knew exactly who the threat was. The second step was putting up smart traps. Based on video data, corral traps were put in the areas with the best chance of catching animals. Farmers set traps with bait ahead of time and let hogs come and go as they pleased, for days or even weeks until they felt fully safe in the area. The remote trigger dropped the gate just at the right time when the whole sounder started coming in as a group. In the third phase, planned multi-method elimination was used. Aerial hogs that were out in the open. Farmlands were at night. Dog teams worked with rough brush. A map, not guessing, told everything to work together at the same time. In the fourth phase, there was constant tracking and quick action. The cameras never turned off. Farmers moved quickly when new sounders came out. Hogs couldn't just move from one property to the next because neighbors shared camera info and set up regional defense networks. But even with this great system in place, there is still one more question. Is it enough to win the war? Or are there other problems that could destroy everything Texas has worked so hard to build? The truth is shown in the next part. The results. When farmers in Texas finally put intelligence, technology, and strategy together, they saw quick and powerful results. The numbers began to move in the right direction for the first time since the attack began.
Feral hogs are wreaking havoc across Georgia, tearing up farmland, spreading disease, and outsmarting hunters.
Now, a new state program is rewarding people who go whole hog in fighting back.
Every year, 50 to 60% fewer people lived on farms that used the full integrated system. Never before had that much power been seen. In some places, sounders were wiped out so completely that it became odd to see a hog. In some places, it was almost completely wiped out, which was impossible with the old ways. It had just as big of an effect on the land. Drops in crop losses were very big. Fields of corn that used to be plowed under every season finally stood up straight. Watering systems stayed in place. The pastures got better. Soil became stable. Farmers who used to be afraid of nighttime finally felt like they owned their land again. The genius method got rid of more than just hogs. It brought back balance, work, and hope. Still, there are big problems that need to be solved. If these problems are ignored for too long, they could wipe out years of progress. First, there is the cost. For example, the cost of buying a full system with cameras, cage traps, remote triggers, and night vision gear can range from $5,000 to $15,000. This makes sense for big ranches, but the price can be too high for small family farms with tight budgets. Many landowners can't afford the tools they need to fight successfully without financial help or cost-sharing programs. Cell phone service is another issue. Cameras that send pictures and movies in real time are what the whole system depends on. But there is still little to no service in a lot of southern Texas. The most important technology doesn't work in those dead zones. A lot of farmers have to use old ways that aren't as effective as the integrated system. The problem of working together is another one. Wild boars don't care about landlines or fences. If one landowner doesn't want to take part, they can let hogs breed freely, which means that animals are always moving on to nearby land. This lack of cooperation slows down progress in some places and makes farmers fight the same wars over and over again. Another threat is still illegal transport. Even though it's against the law, some people still catch and move hogs to make new spots. Every illegal release makes a new place for them to breed and puts more stress on areas that were already being watched. Backwards events can undo months of work in just one night. Thanks for watching. If this story shocked you, hit like, share, and subscribe for more. And don't leave yet. Click the next video popping up on your screen to continue the journey.